So now let's get into the author's purpose about chapter 2. So let's start out with some of the important details that kind of stood out to me as I was reading. So in this chapter, very, very quick summary, the author has the time traveler take his little group to another room, his laboratory, and he shows them a little model of the time machine, and he sends the time machine into the future of the past. They talk about it, and he then shows them, hey, I've been working on another model, one that will take me, let's say, a person, to the future of the past that'll allow us to travel through time. So that's kind of the who, what, when, and where. Now, some of the things that kind of struck me as I was reading were, as he's demonstrating the model of the time machine, he has somebody else push the lever forward. And so I got to ask, why? What was the author's purpose behind not just, having the time traveler do it himself, but by having one of his guests do it? And I think that that's due to, that helps to create realism right here. Because if the time traveler sends it into the future or the past, well, then it could just be a magic trick. But by having somebody else push that lever and make the machine go forward or backward into time, then it kind of adds to the believability of our narrator here. I'm sorry, not the narrator, of the time traveler. We take him more seriously because somebody else experienced the concept of time travel too. It wasn't just him, it was one of the group. And so it makes the time traveler a lot more believable. It's not just a magic trick, it's something that really happened. And then, say, something else that struck me was the psychologist. The psychologist actually talks here for a full paragraph on page 17. In fact, it's the longest paragraph on the page. So I got to be thinking, what's the point of this character? Well, in this chapter, he talks about, everybody in the group has questions. Well, if you sent the machine into the future, why can't we see it now? It would still be here on the table. Or if you sent it into the past, we would have seen it, last Thursday, or we would have seen it the Thursday before. It would be there. But then the psychologist, his purpose is to make it more real. Because we know that in psychology, you need to experience things at the same rate as everything else around you. So he brings up, a wheel. There are spokes, like on a wagon wheel, just these long spokes. And if the wheel isn't turning, it's really, really easy to see the spokes. You're experiencing, the spoke as the spoke experience things. But when the wheel is turning and going at a faster pace, we don't see the spokes. The spokes are just a blur, and so we don't even know they exist. So by having the psychologist give this explanation, it makes the whole idea that this little model, this little machine traveled into time, it makes it a lot more believable because we understand that just like we know there's a spoke in a wheel, but if the wheel's turning, we can't see it. Well, if the machine is traveling into time, we wouldn't be able to see that either because we're not going as fast forwards or backwards as that machine. So that kind of lends more, believability, more credence to the idea that this time traveler here, he knows what he's talking about and he really is able to do what he says he's able to do, which is, have a machine that travels in time. And kind of my last point that I wanted to kind of bring up is something I want to do at the end of every chapter. What was the author's purpose of this overall chapter? Like, what was he trying to accomplish with his story? And at this point, I think it's really, really basic. I think it's really, really simple. He wants us to believe him. Okay, he wants to set it up that this time traveler character he's created is a smart individual, is an honest individual, and is a believable individual because we have all these witnesses around who see him accomplish this time-traveling feat, and in fact, they help with it. Okay, one of them explains it so that the time traveler doesn't even have to, and another one actually pushed the machine into time himself. So again, it makes the time traveler a very, very believable character. So later on, when he's telling us his story, we're going to take him seriously because we see that he's a serious guy in chapter 2 here. So again, as you continue to read, go on to chapter 3, keep thinking. Every time you see something new, every time you get a new detail, and you meet a new character, something interesting happens, ask yourself, why is the author presenting this to the reader. What is the author's purpose? So keep reading. Hope you're enjoying it.